Okay, good morning. This is Ron. We'll go ahead and get started today. Uh, any questions or comment? I think the last time we were together on Monday, we talked a little bit about prayer, uh, desiring to pray and what that looks like. And that pretty much carried the discussions. Were there any questions about that before we see if there are any questions about anything else that we have? Okay. Has there been anything this week to grab your attention? Any question you may have relating scripture or something you may have seen in the news or whatever? Now's the time that we have something.
Yeah, good morning, Ron. Good morning, everyone. This is George,
Hey,
Philly.
George.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to mention this week has been, very challenging, from a perspective of just dealing with the the shootings and the death of teenagers. We've had, a situation where 8 teenagers were shot, and 11 people, over, the period of a week. But more importantly, in terms of just children leaving from school, just being in atmospheres where there's a lot of people that young people are just, resorting to using, gun violence. And, it's been on my heart, with regards to, again, us continually, being in oneness about how do we reach out, how do we, you know, um, I don't say prepare ourselves, but just be conscientious about collective consciousness when we talk about what can we do. And
Yeah,
so it's been on my heart, man, in terms of just, those who are just traveling to and from school and just the trauma that some of the, humanity is facing. So it's just on my heart and mind. And I think that I just wanted to share that because I think it's reflecting to what we're talking about or had been talking about in reference to the chaos and all that's going on in our society. Yeah, I'm done.
George,
Yes.
I there's a program in Baltimore, and the mayor brought the police chief and some other officials together, and they had a meeting with all the gang leaders, and they asked them what could they do in terms of prevention. And the gang leaders said, all of them, to a person, said that the problem is jobs. There are no jobs. Those summer programs that were active years ago curbed that kind of violence. So in Baltimore, what they're doing, they're planning to do anyway, is to partner with businesses and industries and begin to bring jobs in, do job training for kids in school so they could work after school and during the summers. The primary ones that I'm familiar with are the ones we did during the summer, and they rolled into the school year, and it decreased violence tremendously. So I'm just offering that as a suggestion because I know in Philly there are prevention programs, but do they come under one umbrella? That's the question. In order to do that, because I read what you're talking about, and it touched me as well, and I've been concerned about it. So now that that we're talking about it, I believe that just like we did when we met as teachers, what happened? We had a desire to understand Kemet and the spirituality there, but we didn't talk about that much. But we are on the same page with that. So could it possibly be that our discussion of it and our desires for it, then possibly bring into the same space the program in Baltimore, connecting with the ones that are in Philly, because the one that you're with is the after the fact, right? The choice is yours. Is after the crime has been committed, going to court. So maybe the prevention bring those guys together, the people together who are interested in prevention, may be a starting point. I'm
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And as you're stating, I think, early intervention, is what, is needed. And I believe that it's in the macro. We have our first female African American mayor. And so maybe it's the storm before the calm, but I know she's doing a lot to bring that unified effort in terms of the oneness of the city, collectively coming together, to look at what we can do. And I think that there's opportunities, for all of us, and I say all of us who want to call, where I think our calling or our purpose is to bring loving kindness and harmony, but to do it in that way where I think effective teaching in terms of dealing with righteousness, dealing with, those divine principles, and at the same time being able to, share them in a way where it's not, again, from an academic intelligence, but looking at cultural intelligence in terms of how we can reach out. So I appreciate, your comments, Pastor, and that's the vision. I mean, that's where I'm at. And again, I think opportunities, if it's the creator's will and my desire, then I'm just preparing myself, to do that, which, we're all called to do, and that's to be the loving creators that we are. So I appreciate your comments, Pastor. I'm done.
Thank you. Also, you remember George? Kathy wrote that program, early intervention.
Absolutely. For such a time as it.
Do you still have a copy of it?
Yes, I do. For such a time as this.
Why don't you set up a meeting with the mayor then? See, can we do that?
Okay.
And see if we can go from there. Because this is something that we have not dealt with in depth. We've talked about it, but we have not made any movements towards it. So if you could introduce that to the mayor, we see where we go with it.
Okay. Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
I like that. Very good, guys. Very good. Yeah, it's something I think we've all taken notice of, the absolutely senseless violence that goes on. You can't pick up something and read and not see something else, something that horrifies you. And that's a good start, though. Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you, Pastor. Anyone else? Questions or comments?
All right, let me say this before we move forward.
Okay.
I think that the most important thing that was spoken in Maryland, in the Baltimore project, is we want jobs. We would not be out here doing these things if we could find a job. And we have to, at some point, make a decision to contact the people who look like us, who are millionaires and billionaires, to help us, like Byron, what's his last name, that owns weather station and several other things, to get grants, for these programs, as well as other agencies. So, you know what, Byron, what's his name?
Alan?
Byron Allen.
Byron Allen, yes, thank you. Him and other people like him to finance programs.
The other thing too is that Tyler Perry was going to put on $880 million in building 12 more movie studios, but with AI now, and the opportunity to create without the physical studios, that's $880 million that is not going to that kind of activity. So that's another possibility too.
Thank you. You getting all this, George?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am, Pastor. I appreciate the energy and appreciate the information. Making my notes.
Greg, I think one of the best positions in terms of your relationship with the mayor there in Philly to facilitate that. And you know that any assistance that we can give is done, okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I appreciate, the family on the call. And I think, Ron, this kind of relates to, in my opinion, Isaiah 58, but I'll just,
Yeah,
so
I agree.
I'll let the energy flow, man.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
it does a tie in, of course. You're right. It's funny though, I listened to what Barb said. That was one of the things that Tupac used to really push was, why do we have billionaires when the state of the world is in the place that it's in? Why do people accumulate so and nobody is sharing? And how do we open that up? And I guess he didn't get a chance to push that, or maybe he did, and maybe that was a contributing factor to his death. I don't know, but that was one of the things that he used to talk about that I thought was interesting, coming from someone with a background that you want to say is violent and causes problems, but he come up with a solution, or at least introducing a solution that kind of fell on deaf ear. But anyway, good discussion. Is there anyone else on this or anything else that you may have?
Good morning, everyone. I was reading in Isaiah 58, and then went back to 57 to get the precursor to what was going on in 58. But I saw another way of looking at fasting that I had not thought about before.
Me too, Barb. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, George and I were talking about that. I see fasting like I never have before. So
yeah, it has nothing to do with depriving yourself of food and things like that. It's in the actions that are garnered toward others.
So I was looking at fasting, and I was looking at it from the perspective of the Old Testament. And one of the things I was saying to Pastor I thought was interesting, when Ezra was moving the people back out of Babylon, and the king asked him, would you like an escort? Do you want someone to escort you back because of, just what you're going to face? And he said, no. He said, God will take care of us. And he got to thinking about that. And that kind of weighed on him a little bit. So he called the priests together and got the nation together and went on a fast. And that's what kind of opened my eyes to it. And I didn't want to go there because there's so much stuff in there that I don't understand or don't see yet. But it made it a little clearer. Fasting is almost a type of worship. It's a way of knowing yourself and seeing yourself in a way you never have before, and seeing the community that you are. But hopefully we'll get a chance to go into that a little deeper, either today or whenever time permits. But first, I want to make sure there are no questions before we go into looking at that. No more questions. Anybody have something they want to say? Okay. You guys want to look at Isaiah 58 then?
Yeah.
This is Ramel. Can we start with 57 since Barbara said that's the precursor?
We can. Barb, do you see where you
For me,
went?
it was the precursor. It was the precursor, but the meat is in 58.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 57 is just talking about what the people were doing and all of that stuff, but 58 is the meat of, okay, now what do I need to do to fix this, to put it in order?
Okay.
George, I don't want to, this is something you had started, you sent to me and got me interested in it. So where did you want to start with this? Want to start at verse 1 or?
Yeah, Ron, I think, yeah, let's look at verse 1. I mean, I was really looking at verses 11 and 12, but
That's
I
right.
think,
Yeah.
but I think that it all,
I know the other day you had mentioned verse 1. Yeah, you're right.
yeah,
Okay.
let's start at verse 1. I'm basically reading from the Keyword Study Bible, the New American
Uh-huh.
Standard. And I know that there are some other translations that I did look at in the Message Bible, but I wanted to look at verse 1 where it says, cry loudly, do not hold back. And I know that over the period of our last sessions, we talked, or there was the comment that was made to speak out or to cry out. And I think that sometimes when we look at that verse, some of us do it in different ways, but I think that we need
Mhm.
to look at do not hold back now. I mean, we're coming into
Yeah.
awareness in reference to the origins of humanity, the origins in terms of beginnings, and to be able to use our voices now in the way that all of us have the opportunity to bring healing, to our land, to bring healing to our families, to our communities. And I think, what does it mean when it says cry out loudly? And I know we're talking about the observances of fasts, but it really talks about those who may have, been oppressed, those who may have been, going through strife or whatever the issue may be. But how do we cry out loudly and not hold back, but being able to do it in a loving way? So again, cry out loudly just kind of appealed to me, where, don't sit back and just let things happen, be a part of that nurturing where we can bring, again, comfort or healing to the land. So I just wanted to look at, that verse, and then it says, raise your voice like a trumpet and declare to my people their transgressions. And it's not so much, looking at it from what someone else is doing that may appear to be wrong, but looking at self, to know
Yeah.
thyself. We need to cry out, to ourselves and not hold back, and ask for help, and to admit that you need help. So again, that verse 1 was was of interest. And so I just want to kind of walk through it, Ron, or, others who
Yeah.
have comments, but that's what I saw, that whole emphasis about crying out, man. If that resonates.
Yes, sir. And I'll tell you the portion of it that really got my attention, George. It made me think about the heel of Ptah. What is the spiritual significance of that? And I'm going to link this together, and you guys tell me if it should be linked together. Uh, it says, the second part of that verse says, and declare my people their transgressions, in the house of Jacob their sins. Why does it make that separation? And what was it talking about? Are you not the people of God? Are you not part of the house of Jacob? when you look up Jacob, yeah, it talks about the a son of Isaac and his descendants. But Jacob also means the heel. It means the footprint or the hind part when you go down to the root of it, the origin of it. So that got my attention. What do you guys see there? Who's that? What and tying in the initial part of that George brought up, kind of pull that together, if you will.
Hey,
So,
Ron,
yes, sir.
let me read this from the Message Bible, please.
Yes, sir.
Those few verses. Shout a full-throated shout. Hold nothing back. A trumpet blast shout. Did anybody read it from the Message Bible? I should ask that first because I had to walk away a moment.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm reading it from the Message too.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also too, Barbara and Pastor Ron.
Tell my people what's wrong with their lives. Face my family Jacob with their sins. This is the part that got me. They're busy, busy, busy at worship and love studying all about me. To all appearances, they're a nation of right living people, law abiding, God honoring. They ask me, what's the right thing to do? And love having me on their side. But they also complain, why do we fast and you don't look our way? Why do we humble ourselves and you don't even notice? The big part that got me is you have an appearance of being a righteous nation. Is that not what we're facing now? I have been for years. And if we deal with the reality, not only of what they're saying, but the reality of how we live, that in itself should cause us to go beyond study and look deeper at what the message really is. Because even now, some among us are just they enjoy it for the study of it, as opposed to the power that it has to bring about such an awareness that it changes our lives, thus the lives of other people. I'm done. Thank you.
I have a question. Hello?
Hello. We can hear you.
Hi. How does that line up with scriptures that says having the form of godliness but denying the power thereof? Is that the same thing?
Yes. May I add something to that?
Yes, sir.
When it says that denying the power thereof, it doesn't mean a verbal denial. It's a denial through your actions. You don't have to say, I don't believe there's power there. It's where you're at. You talk about who you are and all the power you are as Elohim, and then you do the opposite. Or you talk about the creator of all things that is, and the power of light, and then you live in darkness. Or every chance you get, you find your refuge in the same dark place that you were in before you started this journey. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. So that's what we do in the religious setting.
But that's also what we do in this setting.
Oh, well, yeah. Okay. And can you elaborate a little more on that?
Sure.
The denying of the power and what you just said, please.
You deny that when you get all upset, been out of shape because something didn't happen the way you thought it should happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're in denial of the power. When you throw up your hands and get all discombobulated because of what's going on around you, whether it's Donald Trump, Biden, or whether it's Gaza, you deny the power that you say you believe in. When you believe in what you say you believe in, or what we talk about believing in, then when we look at Gaza, our hearts go out with empathy, but yet at the same time, we understand that nothing happens without a spiritual purpose. And if that spiritual purpose means that people have to exit these bodies, then they're not exiting these bodies out of maliciousness, but it's being allowed to happen because that's what gets our attention. And we're not facing the whys of it, or we are more dealing with the racism of, or the economic parts of it, when we know that is more than that that's taking place. When we get upset at work and we go off on somebody, or when we get upset at home and go off on somebody, then the question is, where is the peace that surpasses all understanding? Where is that belief that you can speak to any issue without going off on folk? Where is that? Where is that when somebody steals from you and the first thing you want to do is hurt them? Where is that? So all of these things that we live in our day-to-day lives, all the things that we experience in our daily lives, gives us opportunity to walk in what we believe, or we end up going back to what we said that we have walked away from. Does that help you?
Yes, sir. So how does that relate to the power that we are?
You don't have any power in your own mind when you do that. You denying the power that you have, because if you believe you have it, you wouldn't go through all those changes.
Thank you.
I mean, think about it. If I believe that there is no power that can destroy me, and that I am the power to bring balance to humanity, then why would I get bent out of shape because of what's happening politically or personally, for that matter? Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. So how do I fix that? How can I get to the point?
Learning, talking to yourself, reminding yourself of who you are when you get to that point of going off on someone, or when you get to that place of doubt or fear. And don't be so arrogant until when somebody tries to correct you, you get upset with them. Or somebody tells you, you know what, let's talk about that. And then they start talking about something that you felt that you were right about, and they tell you, not so much. And you get all bent out of shape, then that's a problem. Because what you're saying is that by your actions and your words, I don't have this power that I thought I had. But at the same time, you're saying, don't remind me of it either, because I know what I'm doing is right. Not necessarily. Does that make sense, Elmer? And the rest of you, of course.
Yes, and I had to say ouch, because I am guilty. So I just want to be able to get me straight. Me, you know what I'm saying? But thank you. It hurt.
You don't get yourself you straight. You don't get nobody else straight either.
Right. But what you said hurt, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and Evelyn, I appreciate, what you're saying, and I, also concur with you, because I was looking at verse number 4, where it talks about, again, fasting, but it says, behold, you fast for contention and strife, and to strike with a wicked fist. You do not fast like you do today to make your voices heard on high. But in the Message Bible, it says the bottom line of your fast days is profit. And it mentioned that you drive your employees much too hard and you fast, but at the same time you bicker and fight. You fast, but you swing a mean fist. The kind of fasting you do won't get your prayers off the ground. it made me just think a little bit about, as you say, we look within ourselves and we're looking for answers to our prayers, to our meditations. And I think that when we can do our own self-examination, or when we're able to be in unity and in harmony, and as we speak about this, again, we'll get further down, in the scriptures where we talk about, repairing the breach. But it all starts with ourselves, being able to, again, do that self-examination. So, why are we, what kind of fast are we observant of, or what is our understanding? And I think that we're discussing this at a prevalent time in terms of us being able to truly appreciate what we can bring to the universe. And I believe that's our desires in looking at Isaiah 58. And so I just wanted to share those thoughts. Ron, I'll turn it back over and we can walk through it, if that's okay.
Of course, and thank you.
One more question, please.
Okay.
So what's the true meaning of fast? The fasting that y'all talking about? I heard earlier, I think, that it wasn't about the food.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to get into in just a minute, kind of walk into this.
Okay.
If based on what you have said, and George, give me 1 second. Based on what you have said and what George just said, I don't believe in verse 3. The latter part of verse 3 says, "And drive hard all your workers." I don't. In you take those words off the page. I think it's, if you substitute thoughts for workers, I think it takes on a different meaning and opens things up. When we fast, we look for certain results, or we think there's certain things that should happen, and if we don't get that, then it causes us to feel a certain kind of way. And that's when the first thing, one of the first things I saw when I looked at this, that this is not an external thing that you say, "Oh, I'm doing this for wealth," or "I'm not paying attention to the people outside of me." Of course, is saying that, but it also says that you don't understand what fasting is about. And if you did, you will know that it is not only about healing the land, it's about healing you. So as you heal you, you see the community that you are. So the denying of self is not so much of me not eating bread, but me submitting myself, another way of submitting myself to whatever the process takes to bring about humbling myself, so I can see how what is needed with humanity. It goes on to say, verse 5, "I choose today as a man to humble himself. Is it for bowing one's head like a reed, or for spreading out sackcloth and ashes as a bed? Will you call the fast even the acceptable day of the Lord?" So I see this as just not abstaining from food, but abstaining from that contentiousness, or that part that is in you that keeps you from seeing who you clearly are and keeps you from humbling yourself. So it is silencing, because if you look at fast, it talks about covering the mouth. So it is silencing those voices that are in you that speak louder than they need to speak, in order for you to see that you need to humble yourself. That's what I saw when I looked at this, and that leads to you denying yourself and becoming humble and seeing the needs in the hearts of other people. Barb, is that kind of on the line of where you were when you looked at this?
Yes, it's an internal thing, but you you all often say it works from the inside out. Well,
Mhm.
as you say, once the inside is straight, it'll automatically flow and manifest in how we treat each other externally, the perception of each other externally.
Yeah. It's almost like Pastor said a while back, giving up your free will. That is said, but as things come about and challenges you, it becomes a process. It becomes something that could be instantaneous, but with each and every one of us, it happens differently. And this is what Fast is saying. This is an opportunity for a self-examination and an opportunity for you to see who you truly are and walk in finding the righteousness that is in you, finding that enlightenment. George, I saw your light come on a few minutes ago. George Watson.
Hey, good morning, everyone. One of the things I just want to add is Mr. George read something, I believe it was from the Bible, about crying out and asking for help. Our society tells me that a male should not cry. I think it's the craziest thing that you can prescribe toward anyone in humanity. And when you cry, in some aspects of it, it is a degree that you are very vulnerable. Yet when our society tells us that the male cannot cry, it's also saying that the male, or me as an African American male, I can't even laugh. I can't be disappointed. I can't be happy. So with some people, I'm not going to be happy around them because I'm vulnerable if I'm happy about something. If I'm disappointed in something, they're not going to know. And these are people who think that they got a good understanding of feminine energy. As you stated earlier, Ron, you stated that Tupac came up with a solution and it fell on deaf ears. In some cases, when we are vulnerable and we're dealing with people who know about feminine energy, it's either minimized or in some cases it just falls on deaf and mute ears. So when we cry out, if the male cannot cry, that means that male can never laugh, which is a degree of vulnerability. There are some, like I say, there are some people that when Drayton was excelling in sports and academia, I was never happy with them. Hey, George, man, Drayton doing this, woo, woo, woo. Man, you ain't never happy about nothing. I can't be happy around you. So, and this could be a contributing factor to the disrespect of feminine energy. Not just the individual that's disrespecting feminine energy, when that person is in the presence of feminine energy and people who say they know about it, do we minimize what he or she says?
Hey, George.
Do we go deaf?
I'm sorry. You bring up.
That's all I had. That's all I had to say. Thank y'all very much.
You can continue. I just want to address that part that you said about feminine energy. Hold on a minute, Pastor.
I want to address the vulnerability. First of all, the question becomes, who determines what vulnerability is? Society or you? I find strength in being vulnerable. I have no qualms about crying, neither do I have any qualms about being ecstatic when my kids are doing things that are expected of them. And I have no issues with that because not only have they been taught to excel in whatever they do, but they've also been taught to help others to excel. So I find no one who I cannot be happy around because I choose to be happy. I find no one who I'm so vulnerable around until I cannot be expressive of my strengths. If it appears that I am vulnerable because I cry, or if it's assumed that I am vulnerable because my expressions, not only of gratitude, but of empathy, I find the ones who see that as a weakness as opposed to a vulnerability. I find them to be lacking in understanding and weak in every area of their life. There's a difference between being weak and being vulnerable. I can present myself, I'm vulnerable all the time, but it does not mean that I'm not in a position to protect myself. Does that make sense? Spiritual.
Yeah, I think in George's explanation, he was also linking that vulnerability with femininity. Do you see the correlation there, or can you?
There is no correlation between weakness and feminine energy. That's society that seeks to weaken our attitude or weaken our attitude about feminine energy. The only reason someone would seek to weaken or your attitude about femininity is because they realize the power in femininity. Those things that you respect the strength of, you don't concern yourself with weakening them. Those things that you're afraid of, those are the things that you try to convince everyone else that is weak, because you want the possessor of those energies, or the recognizers of those energies, to feel the same way you do. And that's just to be afraid of them, but labeling it as a weakness. If it were not for the power of feminine energy, there would be no existence to us in this earth. The power of femininity, of feminine energy, coupled with the power of masculinity, is what sustains us in this earth. If we break it down to the understandings or the sight line of religion and the sociology of academia, or the psychology of it, what we begin to see is that society has always seen femininity as being weak, because society is ruled by men. And in order to remain in control, you have to convince the one that's stronger than you that they are weaker than you. And that works in all kinds of relationship. A man who beats a woman, he beats her because he really is jealous, and he sees his weakness. The man who has to control another nation through brutality is weaker than the nation that he's controlling. So what am I saying to you? I'm saying that everything about strength and weaknesses have been turned upside down. And we have not, to this day, recognized the difference between vulnerability and weakness. And when we are able to embrace the difference between weakness and vulnerability, then we will be able to experience the strength of humanity. The reason I say that is because those who determine that I am vulnerable are telling me that my vulnerability are my weaknesses. When I'm telling you, I'm always vulnerable. You are too. Because your vulnerability means that there are things that can happen to you that others feel like you cannot deal with, you cannot face. My vulnerability is my strength because you don't know me like that. The thing that you think is going to destroy me is actually the thing that strengthens me. The thing that you feel like is going to move me from who I am or what I believe is the very thing that strengthens me. Why? Because when you come at me with that, when I remind myself of who I am, that increases my strength and decreases what you assume is my weakness. Does that make sense?
George?
Yeah, all of it makes sense. It's just it's a good feeling to me when I hear black men laugh. And when I say make black men laugh, I'm not talking behind a racist joke or sexist joke or dirty joke, and without alcohol. You know, I don't see black men laughing like they used to. So I agree with what Reverend Richard is saying. Is just that in some cases of people who know about feminine energy, it's just how they'll minimize it and how it fall on deaf and mute ears with me. Anything that I say that disrespects feminine energy, if it is in the presence of feminine energy, I have to tell the participant, hey, that person's a little vulnerable right there. Don't be so difficult on him or her. We all have been there. So I agree with what Reverend Richard stated. I just wanted to bring that to the table, just really based upon what Mr. George read of crying out and asking for help. That's it right there.
Thank you. I would like to have a more in-depth discussion about the difference between spiritual and secular vulnerabilities. However, I don't want us to get too far away from the understanding of fasting, because I think that when we talk about what fasting really means, that in itself will be a principle that will enhance us even more when we think about the spiritual essence of our being. But I really do want at some point to talk about vulnerabilities.
George?
George,
I'm
that's
sorry.
okay. We can do this later, right? Because I think it's important that we understand it. I do.
Yeah.
But at this time, I really want to get into our fast.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, think about it. Somebody had told me this about fasting some years ago. I wouldn't have to go hungry for 40 days, right?
But that's a good point. I know you're joking, but that's part of the process. That was necessary. I don't think we'd be here today if that had not happened.
You're right.
Yeah. And I think we fast now and don't recognize it. Yeah. I think we fast now and don't recognize it as that because we're so far removed from what it really means or what we thought it meant.
I think that you and George and Barbara so far as you have spoken in reference to it has a lot more to give in understanding it. Of course, I'm not saying there's no one else who has nothing to give, but from what I've heard so far, I'm hearing what you guys are saying, and I'm recognizing the depth of study that you put in it, or the research that you've done to understand it. So I, like so many of us on this line right now, are waiting for the understandings of it. So whenever you,
I think George Clark, I get you in just a second. I want to say this part. I think this is so important, and someone may have said this already. It might have been Evelyn or Barr, but I think this is where we are right now, as far as our daily journey into bringing the universe as a community is understanding this. So that's how important I think it is. George, I'm sorry.
This is Vermel. I have a question right here. So are you saying that fasting is a daily activity, for lack of a better word?
that's it, Vermeer, that's exactly what I want them to get into,
Okay.
because we have so many different perceptions of fasting,
Uh-huh.
and because of what we've been taught about fasting. And if we can see not only what the scripture says about it in reality, but the origin of it as well, I think all those questions will be answered, especially the one that you just raised.
George Clark, I think you were next.
Yeah. I would like to look at another analogy, and again, I know, Pastor, you mentioned in reference to spiritually and secularly, but it made me think about, a baby, who is born. You know what I mean? Again, I'm told that, sometimes they hit the baby on the bottom, that first sound or whatever, that cry. But in terms of fasting, as I see it, in my spirit, I see that as a way that whether it's a male or female, there's a cry. And in that cry, a infant may need to be fed, nurtured, cared for. And I think that's just the process of life. But I see that observances of a fast in a way that, again, is not just in the traditional sense of how we were taught. So I don't know if that analogy resonate in terms of cry out loudly, and then I experienced something this week that I was just going through a counseling session, with one of my participants who's dealing with a mental health issue. And during the course of the first day on Monday, I just needed to look at just being in prayer meditation. Now, I look at it in some kind of way, for me, fasting, not in the way that I abstain from food, but just trying to be able to receive in the spirit of how to, grow through this situation where it could be the support that this person needed. And it kind of drained me all week, but the beautiful thing was the conclusion was the results that I was praying and meditating for. And so for the person to be able to get the help that they needed, to make the decision to have a change of mindset, to seek help, but I'm still trying to look at it in these verses as a means that when we talk about being observance of fasting or wanting to see a change. So I don't know if that is, spiritual past. For me, it's spiritual, but at the same time, I know it's just something that we all grow through. But I just see it that way in these scriptures, that's what, fasting is all about. And I stand to be corrected.
George.
Yes, Barbara.
Oh, that so resonates with me, because what I heard you saying is that aspect that you call fasting was what fed someone. In other words, what you gave out of yourself was useful, was needful for someone. And that's what fasting is all about. It's not to show your own humility and not to just bow down yourself and say, Lord, help me. It is understanding that you are the God, you are the provider, you are what's needed, you are what you have is what can be shared with someone else. And so the fasting is meeting whatever that need is that the individual has. And so it's like it's not two separate things. Like we talk about, we talk about either or up or down. They're all the same. And what happens is you provide what's needed when it's needed, as it's needed. That's how you are fasting. But it also feeds and provides and gives to and shares with someone else. That's what I just heard you say.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara.
That sums it up, really. If I could,
George, Ron, may I ask you a question?
of course.
So Barbara, this is exactly what we were talking about at the onset, where we were talking about programmatic things that can be done to reduce the violence and bring people to a place of peace. This is the same principle.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to see where I want to start. I'll start at verse 6. Is this not the fast which I chose to loosen the bonds of wickedness, to undo the bands of the yoke, and to let the oppressed go free and break every yoke? Is it not to divide your bread with the hungry, and bring the homeless poor into the house? And when you see the naked, to cover him, and not to hide yourself from your own flesh? In other words, not only are we Elohim, we are the hungry, we are the homeless, we are the poor, we are the ones without covering. And when you fast, it opens this door to who you are, and the true energy of what you are becoming. You see yourself like you never have before. So the question is, do we fast all the time? Is that any different than praying without ceasing? You are always becoming. Do we ever take our mind away off of becoming or uncovering truth that we are? So as I do these things, and the examples that George and Pastor gave when we were talking from the onset of this discussion, the discovery is there is nothing outside of me. Remember when we talked about duality? There is nothing outside of me. So I as the right hand recognize what I am, then you also recognize that I am the left hand. There is no separation there. I can't humble myself and not see that there is a need. My eyes are open. My eye is open. And that's what fasting does. It opens me up to see, to become what is needed. And that need is always before me. So the cleansing of the self, again, the abstaining from food is the doorway. It's the doorway, the sincere desire to do what is right. That is the doorway. But when you get into this, as Pastor said, he did this for 40 days at one time. He fasts all the time now, not maybe even calling it that, but it is not abstaining from food. It's abstaining from listening to those thoughts inside of my head and understanding, you know what? I subdue my mind. I subdue my ego. I put all that behind me. I close that mouth because I see who I am, and I bring all of that under submission, because now all of that energy will be turned to light because I am light. That is who I am. That is what I am. So I see it just as everybody, as George and Barb explained it. I don't know.
Yeah, but Ron, and what you read in verse 10, but when it says, then your light will rise in darkness.
Yeah,
And that's powerful now, because we always spoke about, the darkness and the light all being, connected. There's no separation.
go
But
back
then,
to verse 9, George. Go back and read verse 9 too. I'm sorry.
okay, I'll read it again from the New
Okay.
American Standard, and I know other people have the Message Bible, but in verse 9 it says, then you will call and the Lord will answer. You will cry and he will say, here I am. If you remove the yoke from your midst, the pointing of the finger and speaking wickedness, and if you give yourself to the hungry and satisfy the desires of the afflicted, then your light will rise in darkness, and your gloom will become like midday. And so in those verses 9 and 10, Ron, when you spoke about light, the prophet Isaiah talked about it in Isaiah 60. Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen up on you. And so when we can come into this light energy, when we can come into this knowing, that is what releases, the uncertainty, or releases those entrapments, that we can be free to know, like you said, we're moving in who we are as Elohim. So, I just saw that being very, very profound, when you just talked about the darkness, then your light will rise in the darkness. So I just wanted to, respond to that, the word light, because as we say, words are powerful. And I think that we are grasping in our spirit that which we are attracted to. And in the 10 Kemetic virtues, the first 3 that is more profound, all of them are relevant. It talks about the power of thought. It talks about the power of our words and the power of our actions. So again, I think all of this, is relevant in terms of when we're talking about the observance of fasts, but we'll still get more into, finishing up verse 11 and 12, which was the 2 that I originally, spoke to you about, that I definitely wanted to see if we can talk about today, if we can. I'm done.
Where are we though, guys? Talk to me. Is this clearer? Is this clear, everybody? Ask a question. If it's not, let's see if we can get on the same page.
It's clearer
It's
for me.
clear. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
What I'm seeing is that the verses actually describe what fasting really is. When it talks about sharing your clothing, taking care of your family, sharing your food, is sharing. Actually, what it's talking about is giving of yourself totally.
Totally. That's why I linking it to when you talked about free will, giving up self totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is this not amazing?
It is.
It's almost like it's a perceived emptiness. There's a perceived emptiness. Someone has something that's needed, something that has a lack. If someone has a lack, we'll say that.
Yeah.
And you're able to provide for that lack, whatever that lack is. It's like a one complete action, if you will. In other words, it shows that I and you are one, because I have a lack, but you have what can complete that lack, what can fill that lack, what can feed me from that lack. And so take from you does not imply that you are necessarily without lack too, because you have what it is that I need. And so fasting, um, uh, and you do it without trying to lift your own self up. You do it without trying to increase your pride by saying I helped so and so. You do it because it is an authentic feeling of sharing and giving something that's needed. My words are not coming in terms of the essence of what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
But you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, not only for the other, but for you. You get satisfaction, an internal satisfaction that's not puffed up from being able to meet that need. And so it's like what you give to provide to others feeds them in a sense, but it also feeds you.
Yeah. It's like, I got you, Pastor. Nobody even considers a reward when you hear your baby cry. You pick the baby up because your love and your heart is there, and you want to feed that energy to the baby to give him or her some satisfaction, or your mother has something that she needs you to do. We don't seek rewards. Am I moving to the place where everybody's my mother, everybody's my baby? Is that my heart? Do I not see any separation? This isn't easy. It is, if you, when I say it's not easy, it's one of those things you can't give a lot of thought to and look at history of mankind and see what's going on around you. I mentioned something on Monday night that really bothers me. We talked about prayer, but I was talking, when I was mentioning prayer, I mentioned it to Pastor. Someone came to me and asked me a question. A woman at work, her mother was ill, and she wanted me to pray. She said, I thought about you and wanted me to pray. She and I had never talked about scripture. And I thought to myself, people keep asking you to pray. There's something that you don't see. Don't worry about it. Just pray. Don't try to see it. Don't analyze this thing to death. Just do it. So that has been my aim. It should be as easy as somebody saying to me, Ron, I have a job interview tomorrow. Would you pray about that with me? And I said, sure, I got that. So I should not look at degrees of things when I pray, but that's what's in me. I guess that's the way I've always done it. And that is part of what bothers me about. I'm what I'm saying is, it is something that I recognize that I want to move past and move on with. And when we were talking about, when George mentioned fasting, and I got to looking at this, I saw it from a different place. And so that thing that I seek, that thing that I desire, because desire is the whole thing, that thing that I desire will come to fruition. But this is a becoming. This is a moving and a becoming. And there is, as we've done with everything else, we see that there is no separation. We see these things separately for us, because so we'll know what to aim at, so we'll know what to focus on. George, I'm sorry, you are Pastor. Both of you had your hands up.
Go ahead, Pastor.
Thank you, George. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I have no lack. Because Yahweh guides me, I have no lack. The only way that we don't have lack is because we allow the energy, the essence of Yahweh to guide our thoughts. Because if I were given to you all the time and no one was ever given to me, then I would end up with lack. Can you see that so far?
Say that part one more time, Pastor.
If I was always given to you, or if I was always given and no one was ever given to me, I was never receiving, then I would end up with lack.
Okay.
However, because all of us are givers, there is no lack. Because we're always receiving from each other. The only lack that someone who is aware of who they are has is a lack that is perceived as being a true lack. We create lack in our lives by our perceptions of lack. If the law of attraction is real, and it is, then my perception of having lack attracts lack, does it not? Am I on the same page? I'm on the right road?
Yes.
Yeah.
My perception of lack attracts lack. But the moment that I began to see or believe that I have no lack, at that point, let me give you an example that is really, really secular, but because of these are terms we think in, it may impress more of an understanding upon you. If I say that the Creator is my provider, and because of that, I don't have any lack, then when things are needed by me, or there is a perception of need, and I don't revert to where I was before I understood I have no lack. It always comes. It's always provided. There hasn't been a time when my needs have not been met when it comes to my family or the people for that matter. There's always something there to give. However, if I sit back and mope about what I don't have, then I'm attracting lack. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So our awareness is one thing when we're talking about it. It's easy to talk about being aware. It's easy to talk about not having lack, but you don't know whether or not you believe that to the point where you're willing to live it until the perception of lack arises. When that arises, and you can continue your journey of holding on to the reality that there is no lack, and then you begin to have this history of provisions all the time, then you get to a place where you don't even have to think about it anymore. You just keep living life, and everything that's a perceived need is fulfilled, whether it's for you or for someone else. If I were to talk to you, and I can only talk about me because I don't know the intricacies of your life. If I were to talk to you about the income over the years and the number of children outside of this house that we have aided in getting through school, how many families we fed when people were laid off from work, how many utility bills we paid, you would think I'm crazy if you relate it to income. But it's not related, it has never been related to income. It's been related to desire. from the first time I started pastoring, I didn't understand it back then. But the first year that I was pastoring at Mount Tabor, that very first year, I started in January. The association was in October, September, October. And my first statement as being one of the first to preach in that association was this, because the guys that were talking about in the back were talking about money and all the things they had. And in speaking to the congregation, one of the things I said to them was, I don't have a lot of money in the bank. I don't need it because God is my banker. I had no clue as to what I was saying, but I knew I felt that way deeply. And from that day forward, I was put in positions where I had to hold on to that. And every time that I held on to it, and sometimes I needed someone else to help strengthen me to hold on to it. But every time, everything worked out the way it needed to work out. Not the way I necessarily wanted, but it worked out. And that continues to this day. So when we talk about who we are and being aware of who we are, it is impossible to hold on to who you are, to truly believe who you are, and perceive that you have lack. Because there is no way that Elohim can have lack. Can you see that? How is it that the Creator can have lack? If the one who created us has no lack, then how can we have lack? The only reason we perceive lack is because our perception of it is in relationship to what someone else has. You say, well, there are people without food. Yes, they are. But there are also people who perceive lack. Religion has taught us to perceive lack. Religion has taught us has taught its constituents to live in poverty, to live with a poverty mentality, while the leadership in religion doesn't.
Your finger's too far up.
Yeah.
I do it.
Any questions about that?
Yes,
And
sir.
religion has, I'm sorry, Evan, let me just say this. Religion has defined
Right,
how we should perceive poverty.
Thank you.
How we
That's
should,
better.
that's the issue.
Yes.
Yes.
Say that again, Barbara, please.
Religion has defined how we should perceive poverty. And it's not from a spiritual basis, it's from a very physical basis, which
Thank
is
you.
the total opposite of the way we need to be looking at it.
Vermeer, does that help you?
Evelyn has the question, not me.
Well, yeah, we both are sitting here talking, but you said this before, but for some reason today, this is just really resonating with us.
Yeah.
That's all I want to say. I mean, it's like something new is awakening in us. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
I think for some reason we were supposed to understand this and take a close look at it. And two observations, then I give it back to Pastor. One observation is if you look in the book, it says be this. It did not say wait till somebody ask you for something, or you see, you know that this is there. When you open yourself up like this is what you see. You know what is needed. So no one should have to ask you for this. The second thing that, somebody help me with this if I'm wrong. I was looking at the history of fasting and I could not find where they fast in Kemet. I do not see where it started there. It talked about religion. It did talk about Egypt. It talked about Buddhism and Catholicism and Judaism, but it did not, one writer even said they did not fast in Kemet. So if I'm wrong about that, somebody show that to me, because that speaks to me. If the needs of everyone are taken care of, what was there to fast about? If they were close with the Creator and the need was there, what would be the need to fast? But I just thought that was interesting. But if someone does some research and sees something different, we can talk about it.
Well, the only concept about fasting that I have seen that even touches Kemet is what we talked about this morning. That you're giving of yourself,
Yeah.
as opposed to this religious understanding of fasting, whether Judaism, Buddhism, Islam, or Christianity, especially Christianity. It was totally different than going just deprive your body of food. And I have never ever read anything and those of you who've read did a lot of research about Kemet, about Egypt / Kemet, I've never come across it at all in any aspects of fasting or any mention of fasting. I've not seen that. I'm not saying it's not there, but I haven't seen it anyway.
I haven't either. Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not there, but as we uncover this and understand what community means, it just kind of makes sense. But I would be interested to know if that is the case. George, I think you had a question or comment.
Yes, Ron, I'm recalling it back. I think, Barbara mentioned it a little earlier in reference to the oneness that we are. I know I mentioned it in previous maybe times in terms of the word Ubuntu, but we talk about I am because we are. And as we, continue this journey, and I know that we'll probably, pick it up as we, maybe at another time we'll dive into verse 11 and 12. But originally, when this came to my heart in reference to looking at Isaiah 58, I thought about what you mentioned in terms of Ezekiel. You know what I mean? And what you was reading, Ron, and that's what kind of just had me, just kind of
Yeah.
look at this, and we'll get there. But I'm just grateful today that I know that it's not just about what I'm seeking and searching for, is what we all are. And I just, pray and I meditate that we all can know that we have the power to change, those things that may appear to be unchangeable. So,
Yeah.
I just want all of us to know that, we have the energy, we have the light, we have the love to do that. So I just want to share that, that thought. And, as I say, we can, look at verse 11 and 12, because originally I wasn't looking at the observances of the fasts, Ron, and, I think you picked up on that, but I was more or less looking at the portal or the gateway in reference to us entering into the study of, or the spiritual development of Kemet and that origin and that beginning. But it all, like I say, works together for the good.
You're right.
George,
I'm sorry, Bob. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. Oh, okay, George, I want to add to what you just said. You said we have the power. I would like to add that we are the power. We have the power. It's more like make a decision of whether I'm going to use it or not. We are the power. It's much more assertive. It says that I have a responsibility to use and provide and be and do.
Absolutely,
In
Barbara.
other words, it's more than just a decision. It is my responsibility as Elohim to do it.
Thank you, my sister. And Barbara, as I say, that's the affirmation when we talk about the two most powerful words in existence, I am. And whatever you state thereafter is what you are creating or have created. So I am power, right? So I appreciate you, you sharing it. Oh, that's very powerful. Thank you.
Yeah, that sums up the whole study today. But I hope it makes sense. I hope we see ourselves as we open up today. George talked about what was going on in Philly, which is what is happening all over America, all over the globe for that matter. Oppression and violence and people being mistreated. And that's part of the reason we're looking at this, not only to open our eyes to who we are and further strengthen that resolve, but to also be the strength that makes change and bring about harmony, which is what we've been seeking to do from the very beginning. So is there anyone else, any other question or comment that someone may have?
How y'all gonna stop the meeting? I just got me another cup of coffee. I thought we was about to go back in, but I don't know, I'm just teasing.
I was thinking that the verses that George were referenced in the beginning, us not necessarily going into those today. Because of how they're developing them tomorrow, doing it tomorrow as opposed to today. What do you guys think?
I concur.
Especially when we start talking about repairing the breach rather. What do you think?
Yeah, I concur. I mean, I agree.
I do too. I agree with you. We kind of chew on this a little while.
Yeah.
Any questions or comments, y'all?
Let me say this. One of the reasons I say that is because understanding fasting, what it really is, gives more meaning to repairing the breach.
Yeah. Mm. Okay. Good place to take a pause. Good place to ponder a little bit. Again, any questions or comments, either write them down and we'll start there tomorrow. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks again. I hope everybody got a thought and have a good day. See you tomorrow morning.
All right, take care, family.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Pam.